Light is the hope to all who seek. Light is the way when moments are bleak. So look up to the skies. The light is Jesus Christ, and all who we seek will find. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na.
Dear brothers and sisters in Christ, once during the Bible course, a man asked me a question. Father, did Jesus rebuke Mary at the wedding in Cana? Before I could respond, he narrated an incident to me. Once, his co-worker, a Protestant, questioned him, "Why do you Catholics honor Mary? Look, even Jesus rebuked her publicly in Cana." To support his claim, he then quoted to him the reply of Jesus to Mary at the wedding in Cana. I quote, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." Though he was a staunch Catholic, these words from the scriptures disturbed him a lot. First, here Jesus is addressing his mother as woman. This sounds like an impolite address. Second, Jesus' words, "What concern is that to you and to me?" appears rude and insulting. Third, the final words of Jesus, "My hour has not yet come," suggests that Jesus is giving the reason for rejecting Mary's request. Did Jesus rebuke Mary at the wedding in Cana? In this presentation, I will try to answer this question by analyzing the three crucial elements of Jesus' reply to Mary in the Gospel of John, chapter 2, verse 4. First, woman. Second, what concern is that to you and to me? And lastly, my hour has not yet come. First, woman. The first part of Jesus' reply is his address to his mother as woman. The Greek word for woman is gune, and the vocative form used here is gunai. Since some argue that Jesus' address to his mother as gunai sounds like an impolite address hinting rebuke, the first question that we need to answer is woman an impolite expression having a nuance of rebuke? Let us have a look at the extra biblical and biblical sources to decode the meaning of the Greek expression gunai. Extra biblical sources. The study of the extra biblical sources, especially ancient Greek literature, shows three important usages of the Greek word gune. First, Josephus, a Jewish historian, in his work Antiquities of Jews, records that the term was used by a husband to address his wife. Second, it was used to address women of royalty. For example, Augustus says to Cleopatra, the queen of Egypt, "Take courage, O woman, and keep a good heart." Third, as shepherd of Hermes records in his work Vision, it was also used by men to address any woman spoken with respect. From the extra biblical sources, especially ancient Greek literature, we can conclude that there is no evidence to suggest that term woman was used with disrespect. On the contrary, the term indicates affection and respect. Biblical sources. Now, let us look at the biblical sources, especially the Gospel of John. In the Gospel of John, besides addressing his mother at Cana, John chapter 2 verse 4, and Calvary, John chapter 19 verse 26, Jesus uses the term woman to address the Samaritan woman, the woman caught in adultery, and Mary Magdalene. The noun in each of these instances is neither a rebuke nor an impolite expression. On the contrary, the term implies honor and respect. Every time Jesus uses the noun woman in the Gospel, it is spoken to a woman in some distress and seems to have a nuance of consolation. Jesus' use of woman in the Gospel of John could be interpreted as an affectionate address indicating that he will act to relieve the distress. Moreover, since there is no evidence of a child addressing his mother in this manner, neither in the ancient Greco-Roman world nor ancient Israel, Jesus addressing his mother as woman is unique in all of antiquity. This indicates that Jesus has a particular purpose in addressing his mother as woman. This symbolic purpose becomes evident in the background of the book of Genesis. There are many references to Genesis in the first two chapters of the Gospel of John. The first words in the Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 1, in the beginning, alludes to Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Second, just as the book of Genesis begins with the account of 7 days of creation, so also the Gospel commences with the first 7 days of Jesus' public ministry. The sequence starts with the testimony of John the Baptist in John chapter 1 verse 19. The second, the third, and the fourth day is demarcated with the expression the next day in John chapter 1 verse 29, 1:35 and 1:43 respectively. The wedding at Cana narrative is introduced with a chronological information. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana. The third day after the successive 4 days would mean the 7th day in the Gospel of John. Thus, John chapter 1 verses 19 till chapter 2 verse 11 portrays 7 days of new creation, in contrast to the 7 days of creation in Genesis 1:1-2 verse 3. After seeing the themes of Genesis in the first 2 chapters of the Gospel of John, we are now in a position to comprehend the profound significance of Jesus' address to his mother as woman at the wedding in Cana. Jesus calling his mother as woman brings to our mind the woman of Genesis, Eve, and the prophecy of God after the fall of Adam and Eve in Genesis 3:15. I quote, "I will put enmity between you, serpent, and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will strike your head, and you will strike his heel. These words from the book of Genesis, also called the Proto-Evangelium, the first gospel, predict one day a woman will have an offspring, a son, who will strike the head of the serpent. After many years, this prophecy begins to be fulfilled at the wedding in Cana. In the Gospel of John, besides addressing his mother as woman at Cana, the only other reference where Jesus calls his mother as woman is found in John chapter 19 verse 26, when Jesus is crucified on the cross. In John chapter 12 verses 31 to 33, Jesus describes his passion death on the cross as the time when the devil will be defeated. And at Calvary, when the devil is defeated, Jesus once again calls his mother as woman, hinting the fulfillment of the prophecy of Genesis 3:15. Hence, Jesus, by addressing his mother as woman at the wedding in Cana, is identifying her with the woman of Genesis 3:15, a new Eve, whose son, through death and resurrection, will conquer the devil and fulfill the prophecy of Genesis 3:15. What concern is there to you and to me? The second part of Jesus' reply, what concern is that to you and to me, is an English translation of the Greek phrase "ti emoi kai soi." The expression "ti emoi kai soi" is a Semitic idiom, and it literally means "what to me and to you." Of itself, the interrogative phrase poses the question of relationship, that is, what is our relationship? Scholars agree that it is the context in which the question is asked that determine the meaning of the idiom. When a question is asked in a hostile or unpleasant context, it implies rebuke and refusal of cooperation. When a question is posed in a pleasant or peaceful context, it implies a bond which binds two persons together. Hence, it is necessary to analyze the context of John chapter 2 verse 4 before we decide whether the Greek idiom implies a rebuke or not. The wedding at Cana narrative consists of a tightly knit series of events, one occurrence bringing about the next occurrence. After specifying the setting in verses 1 and 2, the evangelist mentions the awkward situation, the failure of the wine. The shortage of the wine at the wedding at Cana incites Mary's approach, and she requests Jesus to intervene and alleviate the distress of the spouses. The request of Mary provokes a reply of Jesus with the words, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." Jesus' response encourages Mary to maintain her faith and to prepare the servants. After Mary's preparation of the servants to submit to Jesus' authority, Jesus takes charge of the situation and consequently changes the water into wine. Next, the chief steward, astonished by the good quality of the wine, praises the bridegroom. Finally, the whole event ends with Jesus going with his mother to Capernaum. The context of the wedding at Cana shows that there is no hostility between Jesus and his mother. The evangelist calls Mary mother of Jesus 4 times in the Cana episode, and twice after this strange reply of Jesus. Second, the reaction of Mary in no way indicates that she is rebuked by Jesus. On the contrary, Mary's instruction to servants provides strong evidence that she took Jesus' reply as a positive response to her request. Mary is not only encouraged by Son's reply, but her expectations appear to have been raised. Thirdly, the evangelist concludes the Cana event in a pleasant event, saying, Jesus went with his mother to Capernaum and remained there a few days. John chapter 2 verse 12. As stated before, the meaning of the Semitic idiom, what concern is that to you and to me, depends on the context. And since the context of John chapter 2 verse 4 is pleasant or peaceful, we can conclude that the idiom here is not a rebuke. Third, my hour has not yet come. The third element of Jesus' reply, hupo heke he oramu, is frequently translated in English as my hour has not yet come. In the beginning, the Greek New Testament manuscripts were written in all capital letters with no spaces and punctuation. Affirmations and interrogations were written in a similar fashion. The context provided the clue whether it was to be interpreted as a statement or a question. The punctuation in modern edition of the Greek New Testament is offered in part by the editors of the Greek text. Hence, the Greek phrase hupo heke e oramu can be interpreted either as a question or as a statement. As a question, the Greek phrase hupo heke e oramu can be translated as a rhetorical question, meaning, has not my hour now come? Or, has not my hour already come? There are good reasons for interpreting the Greek phrase as a question, inviting a positive response. First, our Greek phrase begins with hupo, an adverb meaning not yet. In the New Testament, wherever the word hupo follows a question, it introduces a second question. For example, in the Gospel of Mark chapter 4:40, Ti deloi este hupo hekete pistin. Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith? The Greek word hupo is preceded by a question ti. As a result, hupo itself acquires an interrogative force and hence translated as a question. Similarly, in the Gospel of John chapter 2 verse 4, the Greek adverb hupo is preceded by an interrogative pronoun ti, and as illustrated above, it is grammatically possible to translate hupo heke e oramu as a question meaning, has not my hour already come, inviting a positive response. Second, many church fathers as well as some modern scholars interpret this Greek phrase as a question. Third, the most common objection for interpreting the words as a question is that hupo occurs 10 times in the Gospel of John, and that none of the other occurrences is interrogative. The reply to this objection is simple. We have seen that in the New Testament, wherever the word hupo follows an interrogative pronoun, it itself has an interrogative force. But none of the other Johannine texts come immediately after a question, so that John 2:4 alone matches exactly the interrogative text of Mark chapter 4:40. If we interpret Jesus' reply as a question, "Has my hour not yet come?" then it indicates that Jesus is about to intervene in some way or the other, and also helps to comprehend the words of Mary to the servants, thus eliminating the possibility of refusal or rebuke. As a statement, the Greek phrase hupo heke eoramou can also be translated as a statement, meaning "my hour has not yet come." The interpretation as a statement may suggest that Jesus is giving the reason for rejecting Mary's request. But Jesus does not refuse to perform the miracle. In fact, he changes the water into wine. He only delays the miracle. Moreover, it can be shown that delay in the working of the miracle is a literary device found in the Gospel of John. For example, in John chapter 4 verses 47 to 48, an official begs Jesus to come and heal his son. Jesus responds abruptly to the petition, saying, "Unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe," but later grants his request. In John chapter 11 verses 3 and 4, Martha and Mary send a message to Jesus concerning Lazarus' illness. Jesus responds, "This illness does not lead to death. Rather, it is for God's glory, so that the Son of Man may be glorified through it." But later, Jesus raises Lazarus back to life. This critical study of Jesus' reply to Mary at the wedding in Cana shows that Jesus is not rebuking Mary. On the contrary, he is honoring his mother. After answering the central question of this presentation, I would like to draw 3 implications for our lives. First, let us love and honor Mary, our Heavenly Mother. Jesus honored his mother not only at the wedding in Cana, but he loved, honored, and cared for his mother throughout his earthly life. Even on the cross, he did not abandon his mother, but entrusted her to the loving care of his beloved disciple. Mary is also our mother. She loves us, she cares for us. Let us, like Jesus, honor and love Mary, our Heavenly Mother. Second, let us imitate the virtues of Mary, our Mother. One virtue that is quite evident at the Cana episode is her concern for the needs of others. The lack of wine at Jewish wedding festivities was a serious issue having social as well as legal ramifications. In this embarrassing situation, Mary, by intervening, shows compassion and upholds the dignity and honor of the bridegroom, the bride, and their families. Let us, like Mary, show compassion and concern for the needs of our fellow brethren. Third, let us deepen our faith. When we have doubts, questions, or crisis of faith, let us study and strengthen our faith by participating in various faith formation programs, rather than allowing ourselves to be led astray by false teachers and leaders. May the Holy Spirit strengthen us to do the same. Thank you, and God bless you all.